You don't always hear it coming. The end. Sometimes it slips in quietly, like the way a house settles at night. You only notice the creaks when everything else is still. That's how it started with us. Not with a fight or a dramatic moment. Just small silences, missed glances, long stretches of evenings spent in the same room, but a million miles apart. I used to think it was normal, that maybe this was what marriage looked like after a few years. Comfortable, worn in, a little dull around the edges. I told myself we were just tired. Work. Life. All the excuses we hand ourselves like aspirin when something deeper is breaking. I remember once, we went out for dinner, not even anywhere fancy, just this small Italian place tucked behind our old flat. I wore red lipstick. He didn't notice, not even when I wiped it off on a napkin halfway through the meal, embarrassed that I'd tried. We used to talk, really talk, about travel, art, stupid dreams. Then one day, all our conversations turned into schedules, bills, and what we'd have for dinner. Somewhere along the line, we stopped looking at each other. Like, properly looking. His eyes never stayed on me long enough anymore, and I stopped trying to hold them. I remember lying next to him in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this all there is now? It wasn't even sadness. It was this thick, quiet fog of numb, like I was there, breathing beside him, but also already halfway out the door in my mind. Still, I didn't say anything. I folded his laundry, I made dinner, I asked about his day. I smiled when he came home later. And later, because I thought maybe this was just a rough patch. Maybe if I stayed calm and steady enough, things would come back. God, I used to think being calm was the answer to everything. And then one morning, just an ordinary Wednesday, I pulled one of his shirts out of the hamper. It smelled off. Not bad, just not me. There was a scent I didn't wear. Too sweet. Something floral. Something fake. I held it to my nose like a fool, as if my brain couldn't believe what my gut already knew. But I didn't cry. I just folded the shirt and placed it in the basket. Then I made tea, sat by the window, and stared out at a world that suddenly felt tilted. I sipped slowly and thought, I am not the kind of woman this happens to. Turns out, I was. He didn't. Confess. Let's just start there. I didn't get some heartfelt apology, or tears, or even the decency of guilt. I got something worse. I got blame. It was a Saturday. I made pancakes, banana ones, his favorite, though apparently favorites, mean very little when someone's already halfway out the door in their heart. He walked into the kitchen, looked right past the plate, and said, "We need to talk." I wish I could say I felt a jolt of fear or panic, but I didn't. I just turned off the stove and said, "Okay." He sat across from me like I was his. Manager at work. All professional, all rehearsed. He said the line like he'd been practicing it in the mirror. "I've been seeing someone else." Just like that. No drama, no hesitation. He even crossed his arms after like he was the one preparing to be hurt. I stared at the pancake I just flipped. It was golden, perfect, steaming gently. A part of me thought, well, that's the last one I'll ever make him. The silence stretched. I don't think he liked that I didn't shout or cry. I just looked at him. Then he added almost defensively, "It's not like I wanted this to happen." I said nothing. He shifted in his seat. "It's just, you've changed." That's when I blinked. Changed how? "You're not exciting anymore." Those words, that's what broke the spell. Not the cheating, not the betrayal, but that. As if I was a bloody amusement park that had lost its charm. As if my job, my routines, my growing up had made me somehow less worthy of his loyalty. I felt something rise in me then. Not pain, not sadness. Fire. I stood up, calmly, picked up the plate, slid it into the sink. Then I looked him in the eye and said, "You know what's not exciting? Sleeping with a coward." He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. Into the bedroom, into the bathroom, into silence. Later that night, he texted me from the guest room. "Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't reply. I was too busy maxing out his credit card on a one-way ticket to Bali, a spa package I couldn't pronounce, and a hotel suite with a bathtub bigger than our kitchen. The revenge wasn't about rage, it was about peace, about choosing myself after years of being chosen last, even by the man who promised forever. I packed my bag like I was shedding skin. One bikini, one silk dress, one lipstick the color of rebellion. I left him the rest. Didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a dramatic note. I didn't cry in the Uber. I just left. He was still asleep when I rolled my suitcase out, or pretending to be. I'd heard movement from the guest room around 3 a.m., probably him pacing, maybe regretting, maybe crafting the next excuse. But I didn't give him the stage. The driver helped with my bag, made a light joke about early flights. I smiled, tipped him extra. You'd be amazed how liberating it feels to tip generously when it's not your bank account footing the bill. At the airport, I ordered a mimosa at 7:30 a.m. because I could. I turned off my phone halfway through the drink, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't want anything from home reaching me. Not his texts, not apologies, not my mom asking if I'd thought things through. I had. I thought it through every time he made me feel like a second option. Every time he said I was too tired, too busy, too serious. Every time he made me question if love was meant to feel like settling. The gate agent smiled when she scanned my ticket. Off to Bali? She said. I nodded. Solo. Honeymoon, I replied. She laughed. I didn't. The flight was long, but I didn't sleep. I watched 3 films, ate both meals, and made a Pinterest board for my new life. No husbands, no compromise. Just oceans and cocktails and nail polish with ridiculous names like Reckless Red and Yes I Can. By the time we landed, I felt reborn. Cliché, I know, but I really did. Like I'd peeled off some version of me that had been molded by shoulds, and oughts, and wives don't do that. The air hit me like a blessing. Hot, sticky, fragrant. Bali doesn't care if you're married or heartbroken or somewhere in between. Bali just blooms. My driver held a sign with my name on it. Just mine. Not his, not ours. Mine. We rode past rice paddies and motorbikes, and temples that looked older than time. I breathed like I hadn't in months. Deep and real. At the hotel, the receptionist handed me a glass of lemongrass tea and said, "Welcome, Mrs.?" I smiled. "Miss." She nodded without flinching. No judgment, no raised eyebrow, just hospitality. They walked me to my suite. Ocean view, sunken bath, balcony like a movie scene. I kicked off my shoes, threw open the doors, and let the breeze in. Then I stood there, barefoot, slightly jet-lagged, and wildly free. And in that moment, I realized something. He thought I wasn't exciting anymore. He had no idea who he married. The next morning started with sunrise spilling in, through gauzy curtains and the sound of waves brushing the shore like they were whispering secrets just for me. I ordered breakfast to the room. Fruit I couldn't pronounce, toast thick as bricks, and coffee strong enough to make me forget his name for an hour. At the spa, they greeted me with warm smiles and marigolds. I handed over his platinum card without blinking. I didn't feel guilty. Not even for a second. He said I was dull. He said I was too safe, too soft. Well, soft girls don't drop 5 figures on a full-day spa indulgence. Soft girls don't get gold leaf facials and hot stone massages while sipping coconut water served in actual coconuts. Soft girls don't tip every staff member with the confidence of a woman who just realized her entire marriage was a cage. I lay there in a silk robe while someone exfoliated betrayal off my skin, and I thought about how long I'd been shrinking for him. How many dinners I'd cooked while he sat scrolling through his phone. How many dresses I'd put back on the rack because he said they were too much. How I used to be the kind of girl who danced barefoot in thunderstorms. And somehow, I let that girl get talked into holding someone else's umbrella. Never again. After the massage, I went back to the suite and took the hottest, most unnecessary bubble bath of my life. I didn't check my phone. I didn't post. I didn't even think about what he might be doing, whether he was sulking, spiraling, or sleeping in the mess he made. That part wasn't mine anymore. Later, I walked through Ubud's side streets, all incense and color and the low hum of scooters. A few men smiled. I smiled back. Not in a flirtatious way. More like a thank you, but I already have everything. I need kind of smile. I got henna drawn on my wrist in swirls that looked like armor. I bought a woven bag and didn't haggle. I ate dinner alone at a rooftop restaurant with live music and a view that made me dizzy in the best way. I toasted myself with a glass of wine and whispered, "Cheers to exciting." That night I took a selfie. Just me. No filters, my skin glowing from lemongrass oil and new beginnings. My hair still damp from the pool, my eyes not hollow, alive. I posted it with a single caption. Found my excitement. No tags, no hashtags, just that. Me slept like a goddess that night. Not because I'd run away, but because I finally ran to something. Myself. The missed calls started somewhere around 2 a.m. I didn't hear them, or more accurately, I didn't care to hear them. I saw the notifications the next morning, all stacked like a tower of panic. Call me. Where the hell are you? This isn't funny. Then finally, a single, desperate. Please. I sat on the balcony in my robe, sipping fresh mango juice, the sun warming my knees. I let the phone sit face up on the table, vibrating every few minutes like it had something urgent to say. I didn't answer. I'd spent too many years being the first to cave, smoothing over his moods, explaining away his cruelty, reminding myself that he was just under a lot of pressure. Not anymore. He wanted excitement? Well, this was the opening act, the intermission, the part where I stepped off the stage and left him standing under the spotlight, fumbling his lines. I didn't even feel the need to block him. I wanted him to see everything, every coconut I sipped, every sunrise I watched, every laugh I shared with strangers I met on temple tours or in market stalls or by the hotel pool. Let him sit in that cold, echoing house, wondering how it felt so empty so fast. Later that day, I booked a flower bath. Rose petals in a perfect spiral, a view of the jungle, and a cup of ginger tea beside the tub. I posted a photo. Just my legs in the water, no caption, just vibes. I know it was petty, I know. But there was something delicious about giving him exactly what he claimed I wasn't anymore. Beautiful, light, alive. It was almost poetic, like I'd become the fantasy he chased outside our marriage. Except I did it without lying, without cheating, without becoming someone new. I just peeled him off me like a second skin I never asked to wear. That night, I finally opened the message he'd sent. Just one. "I'm sorry." I stared at it. Not for what it said, but for how little it said. Sorry for what? For cheating? For blaming me? For years of quiet erosion. The kind that starts with backhanded compliments and ends with you forgetting what your own voice sounds like? I typed nothing. I didn't need to. The silence said everything. I pressed seen and left it at that. Then I poured another glass of wine and sat down to plan a scuba diving lesson. Because apparently, when your husband cheats and you reclaim your life, you also discover you're the kind of woman who wants to explore shipwrecks. Go figure. The scuba instructor's name was Kadek. He had a grin like a sunrise and asked me, very gently, if I'd ever been underwater before. I told him no, but I was learning to breathe again. That had to count for something. He laughed like I'd made a joke. I wasn't joking. We waded out together, flippers clumsy, wetsuit too, tight across the shoulders. I was awkward, uncertain, but it felt honest. For once, I didn't have to pretend I knew what I was doing. No one was watching to critique or correct or ask, "Are you sure that's how it's supposed to be done?" It was just me, my breath, the weight of the tank on my back, and the vast hush of blue waiting to swallow me whole. It was terrifying, and I loved it. Underwater, the noise of the world disappeared. No more messages, no more thoughts looping like a broken record, just bubbles, light, silence. A school of fish moved past me like confetti, as if even they were celebrating. I kicked toward a reef and ran my hand gently over coral, amazed I hadn't done this sooner, that I'd waited for someone else to give me permission to live big. He never would have. In his world, I was the background character, the one who picked up dry cleaning and remembered his mom's birthday. I was the one who made life manageable while he went off chasing excitement like a dog chasing a car, All noise, no sense. But here, floating between sea and sky, I wasn't anyone's background. I was the whole damn scene. I surfaced after 20 minutes, drenched, exhausted, and laughing. Kedek helped me peel off my gear and offered me a high five. "You're a natural," he said. "No," I smiled. "Just free." Back at the hotel, I ordered room service. Something absurdly indulgent with truffle and chocolate and extra sides just because. I answered no messages. Not his, not anyone's. I didn't want to explain this to anyone who hadn't felt the ache of staying too long in the wrong life. The truth is, I used to be afraid of being alone. I thought it meant I'd failed. At love, at marriage, at keeping things together. But it turns out, being alone is only scary if you hate the person you're alone with, and I don't. Not anymore. She's a bit impulsive, this version of me, prone to long stares at the ocean and spur-of-the-moment bookings for mountain treks. She laughs more, sleeps better, eats slowly, tips generously. She's exciting, not because she's trying to be, but because she finally stopped waiting for someone else to tell her who she is. She doesn't cry anymore when she sees couples holding hands, but she does smile when she passes a mirror. And she just booked a sunrise hike for tomorrow. I woke up with sand in my hair and a grin on my face. Somewhere between the chocolate mousse and the third cocktail, I'd fallen asleep in one of those oversized lounge chairs by the pool, wrapped in a towel like it was armor. And for once, the sky wasn't the only thing feeling light. Then came the buzz. My phone, blinking with desperate energy like it missed being toxic. I had 17 missed calls, 5 voicemails, 3 texts from his mother, and 1 from him. That just read, "This is going too far." Too far? I almost laughed. This was what he thought was too far. Not the cheating, not the gaslighting, not the part where he blamed my lack of spontaneity for his inability to keep his pants zipped. No, apparently the final straw was me going off script, me not staying put, me not crying in the kitchen while boiling pasta and asking, "Can we fix this?" Spoiler, we can't. Not because I won't, but because I finally don't want to. I listened to his first voicemail while brushing my teeth. It was full of sighs and pauses, the kind that scream, "I'm the victim here." He said he messed up, that he felt cornered, that I should have talked to him instead of running off like some Instagram cliche. Then he said something that stuck. "You've made your point. Now come home." Come home? It was such a simple phrase, but I stood there, mouth full of toothpaste, and realized I didn't know where that was anymore. If home was a place where I had to shrink to be loved, it wasn't mine. If home was somewhere I could be blamed for another person's betrayal, I'd rather be homeless. I deleted the message without finishing it. Didn't even bother with the other 4. If he needed closure, he could find it in the silence I owed him. Instead, I threw on a sundress, tied up my hair, and wandered into Ubud's town center. It was all incense and scooters, little cafes playing acoustic covers of 90s hits, and tourists walking like they didn't know what guilt tasted like. I bought myself a handmade bracelet that said "Breathe" in tiny brass letters. The woman who sold it smiled and said, "For you, peaceful energy." I didn't even correct her. I think I'm becoming that girl, the one who buys bracelets with meaning, the one who believes in her own damn energy. By noon, I'd signed up for a boutique class and shared a table with a woman from Germany who'd left her corporate job to start a yoga retreat. She told me I had brave eyes. I told her I was trying them on for the first time, and when my phone buzzed again, I didn't flinch. I just turned it off. There are worse things than disappearing for a while, like staying visible to people who only see you when it suits them. There's something poetic about taking a honeymoon alone. You see, it's not just a vacation. It's an exclamation point on something that's finally ending, something that had its turn but didn't deserve a second act. I'd always thought honeymoons were supposed to be about romance. Those glossy, Instagram-worthy photos of couples holding hands on the beach, kissing beneath a sunset. But mine was different. Mine was a declaration of freedom, of taking everything I'd been promised and throwing it into the ocean like it was never meant to be mine. I stepped onto the plane to Bali with nothing but a suitcase full of clothes. A wallet full of credit cards, and a head full of thoughts about how I could keep this feeling. The real feeling, not the guilt, not the betrayal, the freedom. The space to breathe without someone telling me I should have been more. And Bali? It was perfect. No need to second guess myself. No need to explain why I wasn't walking around with my partner on my arm. No one asked, "Where's your husband?" No one looked at me like I was missing something. I wasn't. I had everything I needed. Everything I wanted. The first morning I woke up, the sun was still low, casting a soft gold over the beach. I wandered into a little cafe by the shore, ordered a fresh coconut, and watched as surfers caught their first waves. The ocean didn't care who I was or what I'd left behind. It just kept on, steady and strong, like it had been doing it for centuries. Later that day, I checked into a spa. I could have flown straight back to the city and gotten a message from my husband about how sorry he was, how much he missed me, how much he'd change. But why? Why settle for someone's apology when I could have something that felt like real healing? So I maxed out his credit card without a second thought. Facial masks, hot stone massages, mud baths. I soaked up the indulgence like a sponge. Every minute was a reminder of how I'd been living on someone else's terms for so long. Here, I was the one in control, the one who chose to feel good, to be pampered, to be seen. I let the oils sink into my skin, and when I looked in the mirror afterward, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She had this quiet confidence, a new kind of peace in her eyes. It felt right. This change, this trip, like the universe was nodding its approval. By evening, I was sitting at a beachside restaurant, eating seafood and sipping on something that was definitely too strong. I took a selfie with the sunset in the background, the orange-pink hues reflecting off the ocean, and then I wrote the caption that would end my marriage for good. Found my excitement. It wasn't just about Bali. It wasn't just about the spa treatments or the cocktails or the perfectly timed sunsets. It was about me taking something back that had always been mine, my freedom. And in that moment, I had everything I needed. The first few days of my solo honeymoon were like living in a dream. It was strange, almost like I wasn't even real. Like the woman who had spent years trying to be something she wasn't was now just a figment of someone else's imagination. But as the days went on, reality started creeping back in. I wasn't alone, of course. Not really. I had the constant stream of notifications from the world I left behind, and in the quiet moments, when I wasn't walking the streets of Bali or lounging by the ocean, I'd check my phone. I wasn't really waiting for him to reach out, but I couldn't help it. There was a part of me that wanted him to prove me wrong, that wanted him to text, to apologize, to tell me I was the one he wanted, but he didn't. I'd look at the blank message threads, and it was like the silence between us grew louder. Every time I unlocked my phone, I half expected to see some desperate plea. Instead, I got silence. The kind of silence that says everything without saying a word. It wasn't even the silence that bothered me the most. It was the texts that never came. The I'm sorries that never left his fingertips. The please come homes that remained locked in his chest. He wasn't fighting for me, not the way I thought he would. And that, more than anything else, showed me how little I really meant to him. Maybe I'd wanted it all along, for him to show me that he cared more than he cared about his excuses. But the thing is, I don't even think he noticed that I was gone. He'd taken everything I had to give and still blamed me when he wasn't getting what he wanted. I wasn't the woman he'd fallen for anymore. Funny, isn't it? How it always comes down to that. How I was never the problem. He was. As the days went on, the more I thought about those texts he never sent, the more I realized I wasn't angry. I was grateful. I was thankful for the truth. Because he never had the courage to fight for me, to apologize, to change. And I didn't need someone who couldn't even give me that. The woman I was becoming didn't need any more apologies or excuses. I needed respect. And that was something he couldn't give. I sent a message to my friend back home just to let her know I was still alive, still enjoying myself. She texted back a string of questions about how things were going, what I was doing. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't stop thinking about the text I didn't send, the one I should have sent to him. It's over. But I didn't need to say it. Not yet. Because in my heart, I already knew. I'm not sure when I started to feel completely at ease with this life I'd built for myself in Bali, but by the end of the week, I was already plotting my next move. The spa treatments had been heavenly, of course, and I felt like I had been pampered for the first time in years. My skin glowed, my muscles relaxed, and I could almost forget the tension of the life I'd been living before all of this. I'd taken his car, maxed out his credit card, and I had no regrets. Well, maybe one. I wished I had done this sooner. He had always acted like he deserved everything, and I'd always been the one to settle, to compromise, to keep the peace. But now I was learning what it felt like to be unapologetically selfish. I wasn't living his life. I was living mine. And for the first time, I felt like I deserved every luxury, every moment of indulgence. His credit card wasn't something I had to think twice about. I didn't owe him an explanation for what I was doing. After all, hadn't he been the one who told me I wasn't exciting anymore? If I wasn't going to be exciting for him, then I might as well make myself exciting to me. And spending. His money on lavish experiences for myself, it was the least I deserved after all the years of swallowing my resentment. The spa had been a small indulgence compared to what came next. As I scrolled through my phone one morning, sipping a coffee on my balcony, the thought crossed my mind. Why not take it even further? Why not turn my whole trip into something unforgettable? A solo honeymoon wasn't just a break for me. It was a reinvention, an escape from the monotony of a life I no longer recognized. So, I booked flights to somewhere else in Bali and then somewhere else after that. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to be lost in beauty, in joy, in myself. The credit card didn't feel like a guilty pleasure. It felt like my new form of freedom. I wasn't sure what he'd think when he saw the charges, but frankly, I didn't care. What did it matter? He could sit there with his silence, blaming me for everything, or he could reflect on what he'd lost. Either way, I was going to enjoy every second of this journey. I made a note to take a picture at the next beautiful place I visited. I'd send it to him, just to let him know what he was missing. It wasn't revenge, I told myself. It was just a reminder, not just to him, but to me, that I was capable of living a life without him, without his expectations or criticisms, that I could be exciting without needing to be anyone's idea of perfection. That night, I took another selfie. My smile was wide, not forced like it had been in the past. The caption, "Found my excitement." The selfie felt like the simplest thing in the world to take. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, with the ocean sprawling out below me, the sun setting behind me in a cascade of oranges and purples. The light was perfect, the scenery breathtaking, but it wasn't just the place that made the photo feel so real. It was what was happening inside me. For the first time in forever, I could smile without needing to fake it. His absence felt less and less important with every passing day. I was sure he had his excuses, probably explaining to his friends and family how I'd snapped or overreacted. Maybe he'd even try to paint me as the villain. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that I was free. And for the first time, I was starting to understand just how much I'd been suffocating in that relationship. I could already hear his voice in my head, accusing me of being selfish. But was I? Was I being selfish? Or was I simply choosing to exist outside of the narrow space he had carved for me? It wasn't like I'd asked for this life, for his cheating, for his inability to recognize my worth. If I was selfish for claiming the happiness he'd never given me, then maybe I was allowed to be selfish for a little while. But there was something more profound happening. I wasn't just living for myself now. I was beginning to realize what it meant to live unapologetically. Every move, every decision was mine and mine alone. I'd always believed that relationships required sacrifice, that love was about bending and contorting yourself to fit the shape of someone else's needs. But what if that wasn't love? What if that was just compromise? The kind of compromise that eventually drained you of everything you were. The moment I hit send on that selfie, I felt a small thrill. It wasn't a victory, not really, but a moment of clarity. I wasn't waiting for him to change or apologize. I wasn't even waiting for him to notice. This was about me. And maybe, for the first time, I could feel it in every inch of my skin. I didn't need validation from him or anyone else. My life wasn't a script he could write. It was something I was learning to rewrite on my own terms. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how long I'd been pretending. Pretending to be the supportive wife. Pretending that I could fix what was broken between us. Pretending to be someone I wasn't. The problem wasn't that I wasn't exciting anymore. The problem was that I had been trying to excite him instead of myself. I had been trying to become someone who could make him feel alive, while I'd left my own life and passions on the shelf, collecting dust. I looked at the photo again, the one with my smile stretched wide, and I felt a shift. That wasn't a woman trying to please anyone. That was a woman who had found something worth smiling about, and it had nothing to do with a relationship or anyone else's approval. I posted it, and then I waited. I didn't know what response, if any, I'd get from him, but I wasn't waiting for his approval anymore. I had found something far more important. When I returned home, the house felt different. Quieter, emptier, but somehow more spacious. It wasn't just that I had been away for a few days, staying in luxury resorts and relishing every single moment. It was the weight that had been lifted, the emotional baggage I'd carried for so long now gone. I was standing in a space that felt foreign, and it wasn't just the absence of him that made it strange, it was the presence of me. The me I had forgotten to nurture for so long. His car was in the driveway when I pulled in. For a second, my heart lurched in my chest, but only for a second. Then, I remembered the picture. The sun-kissed smile, the reflection of someone who had finally stepped into her own light. I could handle whatever was coming. I wasn't the same woman who had left. I'd changed. And whether he recognized that or not was no longer my concern. I walked in, casually tossing my bag on the couch, hearing the familiar hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the clock in the hallway. I'd become so used to the sounds of this house that I had barely noticed how it had started to feel like a prison. But now, as I stood here, it felt like a place I could reclaim. Not for him, not for anyone. Just for me. He walked in through the door, his face lighting up when he saw me, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the uncertainty. There was no grand reunion in his gaze, no remorse, just the same disarming charm he always wore when he was trying to convince me everything was fine. "Hey, you're back early," he said, his voice dripping with that familiar mix of relief and surprise. I looked at him, scanning his face as if searching for traces of the man I had married, the man I once believed was capable of deep love and connection. But all I saw now were the cracks, the little lies we had told each other that had piled up over the years, and I realized that man had never really existed at all. I took some time for myself, I said, keeping my tone casual, but my heart was pounding. I wanted to feel nothing, but there it was, that rush of indignation. He was still acting as if he could just waltz back into my life without any consequence, as if nothing had happened. "I can tell," he said with a little chuckle, trying to gauge my mood. "You're looking relaxed." I met his gaze, holding it for a beat longer than I usually would, watching him fidget under the weight of my stare. It felt like he was still trying to pull the strings, still trying to control the narrative. But I wasn't playing along anymore. "Relaxed?" I repeated, my voice soft, but there was an edge to it now. "Is that what you think this is about?" He took a step forward, his hand reaching for mine, but I pulled it away instinctively. I wasn't his to touch anymore. Not like that. Not after everything. "You don't get to come in here and pretend everything's fine," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You don't get to cheat on me and then blame me for not being exciting anymore." I saw the flash of guilt in his eyes before it was quickly masked by defensiveness. "I didn't." "You did." I cut him off, my voice firmer now. "And you never once took responsibility for it. Instead, you made it my fault. You've made me feel like I was the problem for years. But that's over. I'm not the one, who's broken here." His mouth opened, but no words came out. And that silence, his inability to respond, spoke louder than anything he could have said. I turned away, my back to him now, already feeling the pull to walk away from this conversation. From him for good. But before I did, I threw one final line over my shoulder. "I found my excitement," I said, my voice quiet but resolute, "and it wasn't in trying to fix you." The silence that followed my words felt like it lasted an eternity, stretching and pressing in around us. He stood there dumbfounded, unsure of how to respond to my new version of strength. I didn't need him anymore. I didn't even need his apology. I didn't need him to feel sorry. I just needed him to leave me in peace. I could hear the soft shuffle of his feet as he moved across the room, but I didn't turn to face him. The door clicked open behind me, a soft reminder that the house, the life I had once shared with him, could be left behind in a moment's notice. I thought I might feel an urge to hold on, but the more I stood there, the more that urge faded. I was done. Completely done. "You're going to walk away like this?" he finally said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "After everything?" I almost laughed. Of course he'd say that. Of course he thought I should just stay, to continue pretending that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I had changed. I wasn't going to be the woman who let herself be stuck in this cycle of deceit anymore. I wasn't going to be the woman who tried to make it work, when the only thing that was broken was him. "I'm walking away because I'm finally seeing things clearly," I said, my voice cold now, but not angry. Just final. "I'm walking away because I've spent years trying to fix something that isn't mine to fix." He took a step toward me then, and I could feel the tension in the air, but I wasn't going to let him close the distance. Not this time. I had taken back control of my life. It wasn't for him to have a say in anymore. "I'm not asking for you to fix me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just asking for you to stay." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting his words sink in, but only for a second. That's all I needed. A second to realize that I didn't owe him anything. Not my time, not my energy, not even my presence. And that felt liberating in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. "You've had your chance," I said softly, more to myself than to him, before turning to face him for the last time. "And you blew it." I took a deep breath and picked up my bag from the couch. I didn't look back as I left the room, walking down the hallway and out the front door. I didn't need to say anything else. There was nothing more to say. The decision had been made. The driveway stretched, out before me, the car still there, as if waiting for me to climb in and drive away. But this time it wasn't his car. It was mine now. I wasn't just taking the car. I was taking my life back. And no matter what happened next, I knew I could handle it. I had handled worse. I slid into the driver's seat, cranked the engine, and pulled out of the driveway without a second glance. The road ahead was open, wide, and full of possibilities. I could go anywhere now. I could be anyone. And I was. It felt almost absurd, driving his car down a road I once traveled with him so many times. The seat beneath me was too familiar. The dashboard too well known. But now, as I gripped the steering wheel, it felt like a complete stranger. The car was a relic of a past I was done with, and every mile I put between me and that house was a small victory. I didn't have a destination in mind. I wasn't heading anywhere specific, but that was the beauty of it. I could just drive. The world outside was full of endless choices, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to answer to anyone. Not him, not my past, not anyone's expectations. I could just be. I kept my phone off for most of the drive. The hum of the tires on the road filling the air, pushing me further and further into a place where I could breathe. The soft pings of texts and calls started to buzz in my pocket, but I ignored them. There was nothing left for me in those messages, nothing that mattered. There was only what was ahead of me now, and I was determined to see it through. I eventually pulled over just for a moment to grab a coffee at a small roadside cafe. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions. I didn't want anyone to ask anything about me. Not yet. Not until I had figured out exactly who I was without him. As I stepped out of the car, I realized how much lighter I felt, like I had shed the last of his weight off my shoulders. No more second guessing, no more apologizing for existing. I was just me, and I was enough. Inside the cafe, I ordered a coffee, black, and sat by the window, watching the world pass by. It felt good to be alone. It felt good to be in a place where no one knew my name, where no one expected anything from me. I could just exist, and that was all I needed right now. I pulled out my phone then, the buzz from earlier still there. It wasn't hard to guess who had called or texted, but I wasn't ready to deal with it. Not yet. I wasn't sure when or if I would be. I snapped a photo of the coffee in front of me, the steam rising in the sunlight. The caption was simple, yet it felt like the most honest thing I had written in months. Taking it one sip at a time. I hit send before I had a chance to overthink it. It felt good. The small, simple act of reclaiming something for myself. My own moment. I stayed in the cafe longer than I had planned, lost in my own thoughts and the quiet hum of a world that seemed to keep turning, whether I was a part of it or not. But when the time came, I paid for my coffee and stepped back into the car. I had no real plan, and that was the most exciting part. As I turned the key and pulled back onto the road, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. I was free. I didn't have to answer to anyone. Not my past, not him, just me. And it felt like the beginning of something new. It was only when I was halfway down the road, the car humming beneath me, that I thought about where I was going next. The weight of my decision started to settle in. Leaving everything behind wasn't just an impulsive act, it was a reckoning. I had packed a bag with barely enough to get me through a few days. It was the ultimate gesture. Light. Unburdened. I wasn't carrying anything that wasn't essential. Not the memories of us, not the promises he never kept. Just what I needed to make a fresh start. I'd been told so many times in my life that I wasn't enough. That I had to change this or adjust that. Be more exciting. Be something different for someone else. But I wasn't doing this for him. Not for anyone but me. And somewhere, deep down, I knew it was the only way I could truly heal. I thought back to that night, the night he blamed me for his betrayal. He had come home late, eyes bloodshot, voice hoarse, as if he didn't even believe the words he was saying. "You're not exciting anymore," he had said, tossing the words as if they were nothing, as if they were the reason for his actions. I didn't even want to dignify it with a response then. But now, as I drove away from him, I finally saw the truth. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I had or hadn't done. It was about his own insecurities, his need for control, for excitement at any cost, his desperation for validation, and I refused to be the person who let him pin that on me anymore. I turned up the radio and let the music fill the space in the car. I didn't care if it was loud. It was my choice, my moment. No more apologizing. No more asking for permission. This was my time. The more I drove, the more I realized something. I wasn't just escaping him. I was escaping myself. The version of me who let him define me. The person who, for too long, had believed that my worth was in someone else's hands. I wasn't that person anymore. I kept driving, not caring about the time. I was getting closer to the edge of the city, and I knew what that meant. Freedom. True freedom. A chance to reinvent myself, to experience life on my own terms, without needing anyone else's approval. The road ahead was uncertain, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The unpredictability of it all thrilled me. I hadn't felt this alive in so long. After what felt like hours, I pulled into a hotel. Not one of those fancy chains, but a quiet little place by the coast. The kind of place I'd always driven past but never stopped at. I didn't even need to check the reviews. It was perfect, the kind of unpretentious escape I needed. I got out of the car and stood there for a moment, breathing in the salty air. There was something about the sea, something about the distance from everything familiar, that made me feel like I could finally breathe. I was here for me, not for anyone else. Inside, I checked in and went to my room. The bed was large and empty, and yet it felt like a haven. I dropped my bag on the floor, the weight of the past lifting with each passing second. I stood by the window, looking out at the ocean, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like crying. I didn't feel like being angry. I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I had found my excitement, and it was in me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. There was something about the rhythm of the ocean that made everything feel small, and I needed that. I needed to feel small in a world that had, for so long, made me feel invisible. I got up early, still wrapped in the quiet of the room. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. I felt alive in a way that was unfamiliar, like a spark had been reignited within me. But I wasn't quite sure what to do with it yet. I wasn't thinking about him, about what he was doing back home, or if he even cared. No, I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about the last few years I'd spent second-guessing my every move, asking if I was doing the right thing, wondering if I was enough. I'd spent so long looking outward, seeking validation, seeking love in all the wrong places. But not anymore. Not here. I grabbed a cup of coffee from the small cafe downstairs. It was warm and strong, and it seemed to ground me in the present. The barista, an older woman with bright eyes, had a knowing smile as I took the cup. She probably saw it in my face. The fresh start, the relief of leaving behind something suffocating. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. I walked to the beach, my bare feet sinking into the sand with every step. The morning breeze ruffled my hair and I let it. I let myself exist in that moment without caring about anything else. There was no one here to tell me who I should be, no one to tell me I wasn't enough. It was just me and the waves. I thought about Bali. I thought about the solo honeymoon I was going to take. I had never really understood the idea of a honeymoon before, why it was something reserved for couples, for weddings, but now it made sense. I was marrying myself. I was reclaiming my life. I couldn't wait to see what Bali had to offer. As I walked along the shore, I stopped at a small stand, selling handmade jewelry. There were brightly colored beads and delicate silver chains that caught the light. I picked out a necklace, a simple pendant, a silver circle with a small glowing stone in the center. It felt right. It felt like a symbol of everything I was becoming. I paid the woman and walked back to the hotel with the necklace in my hand. I put it around my neck, the cool metal against my skin, and I smiled. This was me. This was who I was meant to be. No more apologies, no more hiding. I was free. Back in the room, I set the necklace on the dresser and pulled out my phone. I hadn't checked social media in days, but I had this feeling. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. But the truth was, I wanted to show the world, not to prove anything, but just to say, I'm here. I've found my excitement. I took a selfie, standing by the window, the light behind me. My hair was a mess, my eyes alive with something new, something fierce. I wasn't hiding anymore. And the caption? Simple. Honest. Found my excitement. I hit post, then set the phone down. I didn't need to watch the notifications flood in. I didn't need validation anymore. What mattered was what I had just done. I had given myself permission to live, to exist without the weight of everyone else's expectations. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I spent the next few days letting myself be consumed by the freedom of Bali. It was impossible not to get lost in its beauty. Each day felt like a fresh chapter, as though the world was offering me new horizons I'd never even considered. I wandered through markets bursting with color, ate food that made my taste buds feel alive again, and sat by the ocean, letting the salt air cleanse away every last trace of doubt I'd ever carried. But what was more striking than the scenery, or the adventures, were the moments of quiet, the stillness I'd sought but never really understood. Until now. For years, I had been constantly chasing something. Validation, excitement, a sense of worth. But none of it had ever come from within. Not until this moment, this space, had I realized the power of simply being. I sat by the water one afternoon, watching the tide roll in and out, and I thought about what had led me here. How far I'd come from the woman who used to apologize for her very existence. How far I'd come from the person who thought she had to be everything to everyone in order to be loved. I used to think love was conditional, something I had to earn, something I had to prove I deserved. But Bali had taught me differently. Love wasn't something to chase or fight for. It wasn't something to beg for or apologize for. It was something I needed to give to myself first. The days blurred together in the best possible way. I booked a spa day, of course, but it wasn't just about indulging myself. It was about restoring my sense of self, reconnecting with my body, reminding myself that I mattered not because I was someone's wife, not because I was trying to be perfect, but because I simply existed. One morning, I woke up early to watch the sunrise. It was quiet, just the sound of birds and the gentle crash of the waves, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I felt no need to rush, no need to check my phone, no need to care what anyone else was doing. It was just me, the ocean, and the sun rising in front of me, offering me a new day, a new beginning. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine what life could be like if I never went back. If I just kept moving forward, kept discovering new places and new parts of myself. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd felt this sense of possibility. The last time I felt like the world was wide open and I could choose my path without anyone telling me what it should be. I could feel a shift inside me. I wasn't just running away anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing. I was claiming my own life. I thought of him. I thought of the mess I'd left behind, the chaos he had caused, and the way he had tried to manipulate me into believing that I wasn't enough. But it didn't sting the way it once did. It didn't hurt. In fact, it was starting to feel like a blessing in disguise. Like this whole ordeal had been necessary for me to truly wake up. I took a picture of the sunrise, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold, and posted it with a simple caption: New Horizons. It wasn't just a pretty picture. It was my life unfolding. I had no intention of going back to the life I'd left behind. No intention of slipping back into the role I'd been forced into for so long. This was my turn now, and no one was going to take that from me. I wasn't just reclaiming my sense of excitement or my sense of self. I was claiming my future, and it felt good. No, it felt better than that. It felt like I'd finally found the person I was meant to be, and I wasn't about to lose her again. The day before I was set to leave Bali, I took one last stroll along the beach, the warm sand between my toes, the setting sun casting long shadows behind me. It was quieter than it had been the past few days. Most of the tourists had started to pack up, heading back to their own routines. But not me. I wasn't headed back to my old life. I was headed somewhere new, and I could feel it deep inside. My bones. I had already arranged for a car service to take me to the airport. My bags were packed, my mind was clear, and my heart felt lighter than it had in years. As I walked, I thought about the past, about the betrayal, the manipulation, the lies, but for the first time, I wasn't letting any of it control me. The story I'd lived was no longer the one I would carry forward. I took one last selfie. In front of the water, the fading sun framing my face with a soft glow. The caption was simple, as they often were, but it felt more meaningful than anything I'd written before. Found my excitement. It wasn't just about the trip, or the spa treatments, or even the beautiful views. It was about me. It was about finding the version of myself that had been lost for so long. I posted the photo and smiled at the thought of him, wherever he was. I knew that it was a final goodbye, the kind of goodbye that didn't require closure or any last words. He wasn't the person I had to explain myself to anymore. I wasn't looking for his approval, his validation, or his apology. The only person I owed an explanation to was myself. I sat for a moment, just breathing it all in. The warmth of the air, the sound of the waves, the fact that this was my life now. Not the one I'd been given, not the one I'd let others dictate, but the one I had built for myself. And it felt more like home than anything I'd ever known. I boarded the plane with a sense of calm. The flight home was long, but I didn't mind. I wasn't rushing anymore. I wasn't afraid of what was waiting for me. I knew that wherever I went from here, it was going to be on my terms. I closed my eyes as the plane took off, watching the lights of Bali disappear beneath the clouds, and I thought, this is it, this is where I begin.